We ready in the
Yes,
chat?
we are wonderful. So today is our September Facebook Live event. We are so lucky to be here with two amazing moms who are going to share with us about their amazing children, and we're going to talk a little bit about what they have picked up along the way because they have been around the block a few times and they have a lot to share with the rest of us about what to do and what not to do when you're raising a child with any type of disability, but especially one that has a lot going on too. So I'll let you briefly. Oh, I'll introduce myself really quick for those of you who haven't watched one of our Facebook Live events before. My name is Jessica Aubin, and I'm the owner of the Aubin Aphasia Speech and Language Center. We are speech language pathology providers on Kitsap Peninsula, and we work with children ages 18 months to through adults 102. And Dave Henry, we're so happy you could join us today too. That is working out great. So um, yes, Super Dad is here.
Yeah, fortunately, iPad.
That's
So
wonderful. I'm so happy all of you
I'm
made
using
it.
my phone.
We're doing
Can you hear me?
we're going to do quick introductions. We can hear you, and you look good and you sound good too. We're going to do a quick introduction. So I just introduced myself, and
Nope.
we'll let Michelle introduce herself next briefly and a little bit about her kids.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I have three very unique and different children who are all differently abled. Whether they have an IEP, whether they have a 504 plan, or whether they're just typically developing, each one is unique in his or her own way, and they're all driving age or older. So the youngest one just got his driver's license. And as a parent, I believe that part of my job is to help them and advocate for them and just help them become as independent as they can and to be a great citizen. So
Great. And Sarah Brandt Erickson, can you share with us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. I am also a mom of two children. I've lived in our current location for 22 years, so I've had a lot of experience in the community, which has been a huge amount of help with raising my two very differently abled children. My oldest graduated from MIT in 3.5 years, and her younger sibling is still at home. They're 27 and 26. And I think much like Michelle, nurturing the gifts that your children have is what your joy is as a parent. And being able to find that when there are a lot of issues that come up and a lot of struggles can really tax the whole family, including the mom especially. And I just think it's wonderful that Jessica's providing us this opportunity to be able to pass along some tips.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm so glad you guys could all make it. Really, Dave, tell us a little bit about who you are and your family.
Okay, my name is Dave Henry, and I'm the father of a son that has developmental disability. Christian, believe it or not, is going to be 48 years old, so he's probably the oldest among all that we're talking about. But it's been a journey for 47 years with Christian. And we were told initially when he was born that he probably had cerebral palsy, would not be able to walk, and was probably be severely mentally troubled. Fortunately, that diagnosis was not correct to the point that we did not want to give up. And even though it took 8 years before Christian could walk, he's developed far beyond all expectations. And we also have a daughter who is 2 years older, and she's completely normal and no issues with any type of disability. In fact, she has her MBA, but she is very close to her brother. And the thing I can suggest is that along the way, you may find some plateauing, and you should not give up because different environments, different exposures can kick in and all of a sudden make the person who looked like he had stopped be able to learn again.
Oh,
And
yeah. Dave, can I interject and just ask you a question? Because I know a little bit about Christian, and I think that what you guys have done for him is so cool. When you told me about how when Christian was young, that you took your family on a ski trip, and this was in the dark ages before they had high-powered chairlifts, right? Then there were no special services for people with disabilities at this time, but you ended up in a place where your daughter rode the chairlift up with someone who was trying to teach a blind man how to ski. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that was back in Aspen, Colorado, that we used to go to almost on an annual basis. We lived in Wisconsin, but my daughter enjoyed skiing. And when she was about 10, she was going up on the chairlift, and there was an instructor, and sitting next to him was a blind skier. And she was amazed to see that the blind skier could get off the chairlift with help with the ski instructor. And so she kind of followed him down, watching, what he would do with the blind skier. And then when they stopped, she asked him a lot of questions. Now she's 10. And he explained that he works with people that have disabilities. I think back then they referred to as handicapped. And he said, "Why do you ask?" And I said, "Well, I have a brother who is with us, but he cannot walk, but he's in a little bunny school, and I was just wondering if he could be helped." So the ski instructor said, "Well, is your mom and dad here?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, I'd like to meet with them." So she brought him down and met with him, and he took one look at Christian and said, "Are you coming back next year?" And we said, "We plan to." And he said, "Well, here's my card, and give me a call, and I'd be happy to try to work with your son." We said, "Yeah, but he doesn't work. He stands, but he can't walk." And he said, "Bring him back anyway. I see some potential." So we came back the next year, and the ski instructor was also the pharmacist in town, and he would ski with the Aspen Ski Company. And then on his own, he worked with clients that had disabilities, and he had no feet. He just liked to do that. And that was mainly because he had a 30-year-old son who lost a leg in an accident, and he worked with his son to teach him how to ski one-legged. And then he got, really interested with people with disabilities. So when he took Christian, he could put Christian on skis, and Christian was about 8 years old at the time.
And he couldn't walk at first. He couldn't walk at that time.
He could not walk.
He could stand, but not walk.
He could stand. And so he put a rope around his waist, and he had the skis, and they had a device on them so they couldn't cross over. And then he took him up on the chairlift, and he had Christian between his legs and got off the chairlift. And then they proceeded to go down the hill, and you can just see the smile on Christian's face because he loved it. So when we got back down there, he said, if you don't mind, I'll spend another hour with him, which we said, fine. So after we finished with that, he said, I think that you're going to find next year, if you come back, Christian's going to be walking. And he did.
He did.
So at that point in time, I said, "What can I do to, compensate you for your time?" And he said, "You cannot compensate me with money, but you can compensate me by writing a letter to the Aspen Ski School and tell them if you thought this was a worthwhile endeavor," which we did. Excuse me. And then the next year we came back, we found out that the Aspen Ski School had opened up a special session for people with development disabilities. And the two teachers was Ed, the guy that we talked to, and his 30-year-old son, who only could ski on one leg. Wow. And then Christian continued to work with Ed. And then he began to walk.
Wow.
I love
And,
that story so much, Dave.
Mhm.
It
and
is so
I
inspiring to
I-
hear both how you influenced an entire, and I mean, that was the beginning of opportunities for all kinds of people with disabilities, right? You
yeah,
were right there to help weave the way for that. And also, it changed the course of Christian's life because it
absolutely,
got him walking. And also, it helped you realize that just because someone says it can't be done doesn't mean it can't be done.
absolutely. And also, I want to, emphasize the compassion that his sister had
Mm,
Mm.
so
to
powerful.
Yeah.
ask the questions.
Hmm.
And over the course of the next 6 years, we kept going to Aspen, and we became very good friends, with Ed and his family. And of course, Christian just loved seeing him every year.
I
But
bet.
you could see him walking, and every time we would say we would be going skiing again, he just loved it, and it just opened up so many doors. His
Mhm.
personality, his ability to walk, his
His-
ability to work with other people. It just took one thing like that to click, to probably give him, faith that he could do more than what he was doing.
Mhm.
So,
It's such an inspiration. I know both Michelle and Sarah, I know both of you do things with your kids as well that help them to get out there and enjoy their lives. And I think that those um, what we call therapeutic activities, they are life-changing for people. So I thought I might ask a few questions
well, let
about,
me,
oh yeah, Dave wanted to say one more thing. I want Michelle and Sarah to
I
share
was just
too.
going to say, we gave Christian speech therapy for about 2-3 years. And finally, the speech therapist said, "Hey, he's peaked. We just can't go anymore. He just learned all he can, and he's just going to have to. We'd recommend maybe you learn sign language, but his vocabulary is very small, and then he had gone through special ed at school, and his speech really never developed much further. And you find as a parent, you sometimes talk with your child, for your child. And in retrospect, that's probably the wrong thing to do, is because he becomes lazy. He knows he can get his point across because you do it for him. And,
Uh,
and
It's
maybe
so
that
true. Me too.
sometimes
it's
you have to use restraint. You just gotta show patience, obviously. And it's so easy to just fill in the gaps, and as long as he's moving and he's doing what you want him to, you're happy. But in retrospect, that's probably the wrong thing to do. But the point I was going to make is, when we moved out here from Wisconsin, and he was about 20 years ago, so we found that the state of Washington was really way behind what the state of Wisconsin had for people with development disabilities. And when Christian graduated from high school at age 21, he was able to go to work, and he went to work for a Holiday Inn. And we found during that period of time that he began to develop a little bit further, because he was now
yeah.
in an environment that kind of forced him to speak more and to
Mhm.
interact more, versus when he was, going to school and coming home, well, this is Christian and this is all he can do. And that, in retrospect, is wrong. You just got to give them more stimulus.
Mhm.
And the best thing I can add is about 9 years ago, we were fortunate to finally get Christian a job. We worked for 2.5 years, try to get him some type of employment. And finally, he was able to get a job at Safeway on Bainbridge Island. And the development was phenomenal. We could see him trying to talk more. And when I finally saw a doctor, I said, I think Christian is learning how to speak. And do you think it's wise to try to give him new speech therapy at this age? Or because we were told he had peaked out? No, absolutely, you should give him some speech therapy. And the doctor knew Christian, not who he was, but because he had gone to Safeway and he saw this person with developmental disabilities working very hard and what have you, and always smiling. And he's, I think I know your son. And he said, let me give you a name of a speech therapist. And that's how we met Jessica. But the development that Christian has had through the work environment and his interaction with other people has been tremendous. And there again, it's just another example of you don't know when someone has peaked. Continue to strive, and then they develop on their own.
Yes.
And then Jessica, you've had it for about over a year now.
Yeah, and you know what? They just keep making progress. It is such an inspiration to me. We don't know so much about how brains work, but all I can tell you is that as long as you challenge it, you will just keep making progress. I know that. That is for sure.
That's true.
Yeah. I'm going to let Michelle and Sarah share some of their stories too. I know Michelle's got some ideas together. I know Sarah has a ton of stories and information for us as well, but I'm going to let Michelle, can you share with us a little bit about some of the things that you have learned from your children and about your children in their as they have grown and over the years? Tell us a little bit about the things that you've picked up.
Okay. Well, the first thing I can remember in going to doctors and working on a diagnosis or something like this might be that you're often seeing a new doctor, you get a new referral, and you're going to new doctors all the time. And one of the questions I can remember being asked is, well, what's his story or what's her story? And I found that a little bit annoying. I didn't really like the way it was necessarily phrased. And so I said I would respond by it, and I want to give them as much information as I can without being overwhelming, and to continue to advocate for my child. But what I would say would be something like, well, his life began this way, or her life began this way, because I didn't really find it to be a story necessarily. And maybe that was just me and kind of how I reacted. But I do know that, as a parent, we do want to help the medical community, in research and study, to just, and they're continually learning more, just like you were talking about the brain. We don't know that much about it. We can learn more. So I always do want to help the medical profession, and as much as we can. And I guess my perspective on that was, this is how his life began, or this is how her life began. Summarize as to what maybe that particular appointment was. If it was a specialty doctor, kind of just make sure I was focusing on the things that were the most important there, and then just know what my objective or goal would be with that particular doctor.
Michelle, I have one more question.
Mhm.
So when it comes to, sometimes parents kind of get concerned with understanding what is going on with my child, and they want to have a diagnosis. They want to understand the etiology of what is causing this problem, and am I doing everything humanly possible to give my child the best life possible, right? That's what most parents want. And so how important do you think it is to get a diagnosis for your child?
Well, I would say my daughter is 22, and we didn't have a diagnosis for many, many years, or the diagnosis has changed over time. So, and what my husband and I would say is, well, how important is that to what we do to help her every day? If it helps, if it's going to be really helpful, that's great. But if it's not, if what we're doing, if the therapies we're doing or the advocacy we're doing for her education or for her job skills or whatever that might be is the most important thing, then really the diagnosis isn't as important. It can be hard when, your friends are getting diagnosis or you just think that you need to know it to help your child, that it's really, really important. And then you can go down that rabbit hole, right, of digging through, oh, it's this, I think it's this because, he or she exhibits this characteristic. But if it's not really helping what you need to do to help them in everyday life and to help them become more independent, then you just have to know that you're going to keep trying, like Dave said, right? You're never going to give up, and you're going to go through waves. There's going to be roller coasters of, okay, we're in therapy or we're out of therapy. It may come, and it may take a long time. It may never come. But I think it's important to focus on what you're doing day to day and just keep trying, but don't dig in too deep.
Yeah. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
I sure do. Yeah. I think one of the real advantages we had was that our son's initial diagnosis was encephalopathy, which meant something was wrong with his brain. And we were like, really? Well,
you're not kidding.
We understand that. But I have to tell you that the broad spectrum of different therapies and tools that then were available to us because we didn't have a pigeonholed diagnosis was wonderful. So at a young age, even though it would have been great for mom and dad to wrap their brain around maybe what was going on and see a life pattern that we could plan for with that diagnosis, that might have been helpful for us. But I really think for our son, it was wonderful that people just had to throw everything they had at him and see what stuck. And it was truly important because until he became quite a mature young man, things haven't really stuck. It has taken him almost 2 decades to really be able to process the world and be engaged in the world really successfully like he is now. He's just a super social guy and really responds well to stimulation, needs a lot of downtime, but when he's out in the world, he's 100%. And that's just 2.5 decades of different types of therapies, sensory and speech and all sorts of things. But once we did get his diagnosis, it was a very rare genetic disorder that had caused the abnormality of his brain. It was kind of a relief because I had a really bad spider bite from a camping trip in my first trimester. And I also had the flu when I was carrying him. And so there's that bit of maternal guilt, but I have to say, was really relieved when I found out it had nothing to do with either of those things. And it was just the way that he, at the very beginning of life, what happened to him and the way that he developed. And so in a way, for us, it's been sort of a blessing to have things turn out the way they did.
Yeah, I bet.
And I would just chime in on that too. I know that feeling of the maternal guilt, and that can live with you and really haunt you.
Yeah.
So I do think that getting some more information is helpful. But I do agree too that, without a diagnosis or without something pinpointed, that you can just explore so many different things and help your child in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So Michelle and Sarah, Dave shared just a really inspiring story about how his adult son, who's, in his late 40s, is continuing to make amazing progress. Have you two experienced similar things, that as your child gets older, that they're still able to learn and grow and develop their skills?
Oh, yeah. Michelle, you want to go ahead?
Yes, I would definitely agree. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, I have three very different kids, and
Mm.
one of them is I'm going to do this, and this is what I want to do. And I think many people may doubt him or have doubted him, but he's sticking to his guns, and we're doing what we can to support him. And I think he's just um, he has so many other strengths other than his different abilities that make him a pretty amazing person. Um,
Mm.
and I think that's really that's really cool to see.
It is. I honestly, all of your children, and I know all of your children. Well, I don't know the older ones, but I know all of your children. They are all inspirations to me. I'm just amazed at the things that they do, and yeah, they make me want to go do fun physical things. So I want to talk really quickly about therapeutic exercises. I know we know Christian's a skier and that he also goes to the gym pretty regularly and he works out to stay strong. Michelle and Sarah, what are some of the physical outlets for your kids?
Well, I'll pipe in there first, because one of the things I wanted to follow on with Michelle is the joy of knowing your child as an adult, and all the wonderful nuances in their personality that come out that you really, it took them a while to form, but also once you get out of the school years, you have a little bit more flexibility. At least for me, during my child's best hours, they were usually at school. And so I didn't get to see that really strong personality and interests. And so when our son graduated from school, it gave a lot of opportunity to see what he was interested in. And the first thing I just have to mention is that he is a huge baseball fan, and for the last 8 years he's worked for the Seattle Mariners at giving away promotions. Now, we were just blown away when the opportunity came along for Axel, and then he joined over 200 other adults with developmental disabilities in doing similar work for them. And it's just been so great to see him grow and the friendships he's been able to make on the other side. But right back to your question, physical engagement is hugely important to our family, both because we enjoy it and love living here and being in the outdoors, but also because it's so important to keep our son's system healthy. And we have just found adaptable ways to do it. We have an accessible jogger so that we can go out hiking together. I'm always taking him into trails that are maybe a little bit riskier than we really should be going on. But I love the adventure and he loves being outside. And so we do that all over really the Pacific Northwest. And then recently we just bought him a 2-seated trike with a little bit of a motor lift to it that gives the three of us, Dad and I and Axel, ways to go out into bike trails together. And gosh, just exploring the outdoors and being around other people with him has been just the most fabulous thing. I would say that really the jogging stroller and the bike have been just a miracle in opening up our world together. So that's, and we also had the joy of skiing with Axel when we were in Jackson, Wyoming. My brother works for the Jackson Hole Ski Resort, and he had a really good friend who did accommodated skiing. And so a couple times we took him on the bunny slope, and he wasn't really into the cold because it stays pretty chilly down there in the wintertime, like minus degrees. But to see the wind in his face, because he's always liked sailing. And so it's been, really been fun.
That's so fabulous. And Michelle, share a little bit about your things. You like horses, right?
Yes. So our daughter does therapeutic horseback riding. She's done that for a long time, probably about 15 years. And it's pretty amazing because, she just gets to see the world in a whole different way. And she doesn't have to worry about walking, but it's still really helping her because there's a lot of core required in that, and position and stability. So she gets to see the world a different way and interact with animals and other people because it takes a number of volunteers to help do that. And then we also really love the outdoors. So our daughter has a trailer that we bike with. So, and it converts to a jogger. So it's dual purpose. She has her own tricycle, but I'm really intrigued by the two-seated with a motor trike. That sounds really, really quite interesting. And she really loves swimming. And so we've found ways for her to go to the aquatic center. And the nice thing about that is just, you're weightless in the water, and it's just, it's pretty amazing. And it's really, really good for you.
Yeah.
And Jessica knows all about that because she's a big swimmer.
Yeah, I do. I love to swim. Well, and all your kids are big swimmers too. So, Dave, can you share with us a little bit about what, apart from skiing, what else does Christian like to do for fun when he gets out on the weekend?
Well, Christian has gone through, when he was a teenager, we had a 3-wheel bike for him. And what we always try to do was try to keep him doing activities like other kids did. So if they were on their bikes, he'd like to go bike, but he couldn't do a 2-wheeler. So we got him a 3-wheeler. And he would go with his friends around 2-wheel bikes, and he'd have his 3-wheel bike. And one of the key things is that if you can find a group of people who will accept the fact that one of their friends has a disability, you will find that in a few outings, they don't see the disability anymore.
No, they don't.
They just see a friend.
It's true.
And so,
Dave, have you heard of Circle of Friends? Do you know what that is?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, Michelle and Sarah, I'm pretty sure they have that at the high school. The local high schools have Circle of Friends. Yeah. That's.
And
can you tell, some of our younger parents in the audience might not know what a Circle of Friends is because their kids might be little. Can you just let them know kind of what Circle of Friends is?
You're talking to Michelle or me?
Any of you who wants to share what Circle of Friends is?
I don't really know. It started at the high school just as we were leaving. So,
all right, Michelle, you get to share.
So it's a club at the high school. I would call it, an activity that typically developing teenagers can join. But the nice thing about it is that they eat lunch with the kids who are perhaps in the resource room or maybe looking for more friends. And I think the other thing to know is that it's not just a club. The way I see it at our high school is that the kids are integrated in so many ways. The cheerleading group is very open, and cross country, all the different sports are just so open to all the kids.
They foster inclusivity very well.
That it goes across the board. It's not just about if you need to eat lunch with someone, but there's so many just different opportunities for all of the kids, and they're all very inclusive and supportive.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter what you have going on or who you are. The whole idea is that everyone's included and everyone is welcome. It's anyway, so Dave, that was just tying back into what you were saying.
Yeah, again, as he was growing up, we did Special Olympics, and he liked to, run like he could, but it was very fast walking. But most of it was socialization, being with other people. And, it's just amazing how you forget that they need friendships. And one of the things that I've learned, and it was kind of late, maybe the last 5 years, is when we have 2 children and one is completely normal, and you become a parent and you have a tendency to parent the one with the disability the same way you do the one that doesn't have the disability. And it was finally pointed out to me that you got to know there are some limitations. And when the doctor really explained what Christian's disability was and how his brain functions, because he would have moments of malbehavior at home. And we also have a care provider for him because we have had Christian live in his own house for maybe the last 20 years with a 24/7 care provider. And then now he goes to work and then he spends weekends with me. But I have to understand, as it was explained to me, that when he never had any behavior issues at school, he never had any at work. And why does he have them when he comes home? And it was explained to me that he keeps it inside because he knows that in the atmosphere of work or the atmosphere of school, he can't get away with it. But he all of a sudden then lets loose because he knows that mom and dad have always let him do that. And so, I would say, you can't do this, Christian, or you can't do that. Well, I've stopped doing that. And sometimes I'll agree, hey, yeah, you should do that. And all of a sudden, the outbursts are minor. It's because I've learned what is going through his mind and what his needs are. I cannot treat him like I did my daughter. I don't know if that makes sense to you. And once you know what are the things that, makes him, go malbehavior, you try to avoid those things. And it took me, my goodness, 42 years before I learned how to do that. My wife probably had more control because she was more gentle than I was. I would say, hey, stop it, and like you would do a parent normally with a child. We sometimes can't do that because it becomes an antecedent and then it causes malbehavior. And the other thing is, probably 2 years ago, I took Christian out. We belonged to a country club on Bainbridge and gave him a putter. Said, let me show you how to putt. And it's amazing what he did. And then I gave him a golf club, figuring anyone that's new is not going to be able to hit the ball. He hit the ball. And then, got in the golf cart and he can drive the riding lawnmower I have. So I let him drive the golf cart. He absolutely loved it. Okay. So we go out every Sunday and we spend about an hour together on the golf course, and he's hitting the golf ball and he loves to keep score.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. But, and you just see how he can write. I mean, the numbers, I never knew he could do the numbers, but he just sits there and follows the scorecard. And, then the head pro out where we belong has a son that has autism. And he said, my son can spend hours just filling in a scorecard. So he gave us all these scorecards. And Christian will sit for hours, filling out the scorecard. But boy, comes Sunday, he puts on the golf shirt. He's ready to go. He absolutely loves it. But the most important thing is the community that he's joined, they all know him. And they all say, hey, how you doing, Christian? He said, hi, how you doing? Have a good day. So he feels, he's included and he likes that, and everyone knows him, which is wonderful, because he just feels relaxed. And more important, the people who would shy away because he saw someone with a disability all of a sudden see him as a person. And they now integrate with him and they don't shy away. And it's a learning curve on both sides. But right now, golf is his thing. And we both love going out together and doing that. I wish I'd tried it 20 years ago with him, but I figured, oh, he can't do that. He can barely stand.
Yeah, don't believe that. Don't believe that stuff.
Anyway, that's enough for me, probably.
No, I love it. I love Michelle and Sarah. We talked a lot. We went a little over time here, but I'd love to hear from each of you. Do you have any tips or wisdom or resources that you think would be helpful for younger parents to know about that would help them kind of navigating, the road ahead, like what lies ahead? What would you want to pass along to a younger a younger parent?
Well, let me just say one thing. I learned about the ARC, ARC, and when I learned about it some 35 years ago, it was called the Association for Retarded Citizens, which is horrible. So they no longer refer to themselves, but the ARC, ARC. And there's one that's in Silverdale and Bremerton, but I have been involved with them for good 40 years, including the one in Wisconsin, and I became the president of the association. And it's a national thing, but it's amazing what they can show you and what they can counsel with you and help you and introduce you to other parents who are going through the same thing. You know,
Mhm.
you have to connect with someone else who's living what you're living. Because if you're connecting with just normal people, they don't understand the
Mhm.
frustrations that you have, the
That's
patience that
true.
you require. And so I would recommend looking into the ARC. That's been
That'd be
very
great.
beneficial for me.
I know Sarah's quite connected too with a local resource called Vitalize Kitsap, which is
Mhm.
really amazing.
Yep. Yep.
Michelle,
And
did you
I would just
have?
pop in here too, Jessica, for a sec. I have to say, first and foremost, the resource that's most important is that you take care of yourself, that it's a long journey ahead. And I remember people telling me that, but until I started actually following through on that, I don't think I was as good a parent as I could have been. So just finding what brings you joy and making sure you carve some of that time out for yourself is super important to not getting resentful of the long journey you're on and of being able to stay focused on kind of the task at hand each day. But as basically out into organizations, there are so many. And I remember as each one was presented to me, I was like, where has this been all of my parenting life? So I will share with you, you know, so that you can post it up. So many. But one of the best that we've had, well, here on the island, certainly Vitalize Kitsap is a just really growing program. Yep, formerly Island Time Activities day program, and we are just on the cusp of bursting into the county. And there's great energy on the board and in the staff, and the members are there are 35 of them that are very active right now, all very excited to be back together after the COVID. Hopefully we can stay open. And that's local, but also for parents, the Kitsap Parent Coalition, which is run by Easter Seals. And then for us, one of the greatest joys are two camps that Axel attends every summer. One run by Easter Seals, Camp Stand By Me, and the other one is Camp Bosite, that was founded by the Port Angeles Kiwanis Club. And I have to just emphasize, because Axel, our son, is quite profoundly developmentally delayed and has some physical disabilities, that having the independence of being able to go to camp, both for himself and for our family, has just been incredible. It really helped him turn into quite a young man, you know, to be able to be home, be away from home, and give us all the time to sort of reconnect with who we are at our basic selves. So, but there, I have quite a few others, and so I'll be happy to share those with you.
So Sarah, you mentioned Camp Stand By Me, and what's the other camp that you got connected with for
It's
Axel?
called Camp Bosite, and it's in Chimicum, Washington.
And now both those camps, are those day camps, or is it a place where you
No.
send your child for the week? Tell us a little bit about how that works.
So Camp Stand By Me runs 5 to 7 night camps, and they are also they're based on age and also on need. So our child needs one-to-one support 24/7, and he can receive that at camps. They've got different sessions basically depending on the accommodations that your child needs. And then Camp Bosite is a rather new experience for us. Axel's only been twice, and they're evolving. They've got a beautiful facility, and they're just starting to work with their staffing. I think the COVID's actually been good for them to kind of step back and recharge a little bit. And so they offer camps that are open to everybody, but they will provide one-to-one care as well.
That's so fabulous. Thank you for sharing those resources. Michelle, you wanted to share some more?
I wanted to add what Vitalize Kids Up. I second and third, as well as Camp Stand By Me. I'm not familiar with the other camp, but one camp is the camp that our daughter started out in is called Camp Corey. And
Yeah.
it used to be in Carnation. I forget where it is. They've moved locations,
Mhm.
and she aged out of that. But it is an amazing, amazing place.
Yeah.
And they would have, and I can remember, could my daughter even go to camp with the thought,
Right.
could she go? But they just made us feel so comfortable. And it's Korey, Camp Corey.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Yeah,
and
Christian went to that.
yeah, it's an amazing place. And I remember my husband wasn't able to go when her very first year that she went. And I said, it was like walking into Disneyland. It was just, it was beautiful. And you just felt so happy and so comfortable. And my other kids got to, just while she's being in process, got to come. And it was just such an amazing place with amazing people. So I
Yeah.
second those other organizations as well, but add that one because the younger kids can go there.
And there's
As
one more too, Jessica, is Camp Stanley Stam is run by Seattle Children's Hospital,
Oh.
and it's at the base of Mount Rainier. And Axel went there for the first 2 years. And that was also great support at that time for him. And that definitely is for younger children. A beautiful
wow.
facility.
And that's a sleepaway camp too, where your
Yeah.
child goes for the whole 7 days, 24/7, and mom and dad get to actually have a vacation.
Yep.
Wow.
The Camp Corey spelled with a C, not a K. I saw it pop up here.
Well, we are going to put together a flyer with all of these camps properly, have their names properly spelled on them. And we will put that up on Facebook for our families who are interested in watching, because these are great resources for families to know. I just have a quick question too about those camps, about how much lead time do you need to get your kid in a camp like that?
Well, it's important to research the camp and make sure they're going to be a good fit for your child. And we visited each one before Axel went. But you definitely need to get on the list. And as soon as registration opens, you need to be sitting in front of your computer and start the process. Like the day, the hour registration opens.
So just watch for it, set a couple alerts, and don't wait too long.
Let me ask a question. Has anybody used the Stevens House on Bainbridge Island?
Oh yeah.
So they're just starting to reopen, David, and they've moved into Eagle Harbor Church,
Yes.
into the spaces down there. So they have 2 staff that they have hired. And I think that they're starting up slowly. I think they've got 3 clients that are going in right now.
Yes, I'm aware of that. And just want to make sure you guys were, because I was involved in getting Stevens House up and running about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then with the pandemic, they had to close down when they were at the Eagle Harbor Church.
Right.
And you got the same emails that they're restarting again. I think they've got 5 or 6 maybe clients.
Oh,
and also my daughter, who has a CrossFit on the island, she once again is going to offer, like she has done, for the clients that come to the gym on a Monday, pro bono. And they've really enjoyed that, to be able to work out. And so as long as if you can put a list together, I would definitely add the Stevens House on Bainbridge Island, because it's a respite place where the clients can go and spend probably up to 6 or 7 hours. It used to be every day. I don't know what their schedule is now, but that's a nice respite for parents. And
they have a lot of activities for the month. You mean your child can participate in leadership opportunities there, and they have, outings to the movies or the pool or the bowling alley or social get-togethers. So Stevens House has some amazing resources for sure.
Yep.
Sarah, you mentioned one thing. This is going to be the last question, then we're going to really wrap up. But Sarah, you mentioned one thing about checking out the camps and checking out spaces. And I know, Michelle, before everyone got here, we were chit-chatting, and you also made a comment about the importance of checking out classrooms and checking out the environment that your child will be in before you accept advice or recommendations. Can you just share a little bit about your thoughts around that and maybe some experiences? Michelle?
Sure. So because I was thinking, okay, what regrets did I have, or what mistakes did I make along the way? And one of the biggest things that I remember is at one point agreeing to something, and I think it was in the educational setting, and realizing that I didn't check it out as much as I should have. But like Sarah, when I took my daughter to camp, I went. I thought, okay, I want to see this place before I take my daughter here. And so we went and visited and checked it out and talked to the director and asked to make sure they can care for your child. And we all make mistakes along the way in terms of what we do. But there were times that I thought, if I would have really known what that was, would I have said that was the right place for my child, or was it the right fit at the right time? Because I'm the one who knows what he or she wants to do, and where they want to go more than anyone. And other people may not see that, just like we've talked about earlier. They may not see that capability in our child. And those things change along the way too. So I think it's always good. And you can talk to other people, go visit, but remember, it's your child, not someone else's child, or how it works for someone else. It's how it works for this person that you know so well, and what they want, what their goals are, and what they're capable of. So I think it's really important to make sure you know what you're getting into, and that's a good fit.
Yeah, thanks. Sarah, did you, in your closing thoughts, did you have any ideas or thoughts that you wanted to share with parents about along those lines?
On access?
Yeah, about or just
in general?
In general.
I think my in general takeaway that I was going to give was that you kind of have to get out of your own vision of what you thought life was going to be like and enjoy the life that's been presented to you. And once you do that, you're going to find that you've got a very rich life. But as David has touched on, and Michelle has too, you have to know the path that's right for you and for your family, and be kind of fierce in that advocacy for it. And then you get wonderful people like Jessica who come along in your life and just make each time you see them a joy. And that's not every day, but then you start to look forward to it. And so I think it's really getting to know yourself and your family and your child that will give you the most pleasure in life.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Dave, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up here?
Well, anything I would add would be, as you age, remember someday you won't be here. What is the life going to be for your child when you're gone? What plans are you making, or have you made, to benefit them? And sometimes we don't think that way, but as you begin to get older, you have to think that way, especially when your child has been so dependent on you. What's their life going to be after you're gone? And so I urge everyone to think about that. Work with attorneys if you have to, or other families who've gone through it. What preparation have they made, or they are making? Because your child is going to live much longer than you. And just think about that. And sometimes we like to shove it away and don't think that way. But, you put so much energy into developing your child to the person that they are today, and you hope will become better tomorrow, that someone else can step in, and fill your shoes. That's all I would say.
That's a great point.
And I just had one closing thought too, is that I think I echo both of these comments that they've just made. But also, I think one of the proudest moments I've ever had was when somebody came to me and said, I know you, you're Casey's mom.
Right.
And I had no idea who this person was or how they knew my daughter, but it made me feel really happy because I just thought, yeah, life maybe didn't turn out how I expected it to be, but just as Sarah said, embrace it. Remember where you're going. Like Dave said, remember what's going to happen, but also remember those moments where you're just so proud to be the parent of the child and children that you have.
Mhm.
Thank you so
Agreed.
much. This was such a great panel. I'm so grateful to all of you for coming and sharing your thoughts and your experiences with us. And we've gone way over time. We thought we would wrap up about 4, but oh well, sometimes you just have to go with it. Thank you
Okay.
so much for joining us. We will be posting this event on Facebook, and it will be on the Holly Ridge Facebook site, and then they'll share it with us and we can repost it on ours, so it'll be accessible to people who weren't able to log in at the time to watch it. You can go back and watch it again. And we will also be posting some of the resources that got referenced in our Facebook Live event today so that families can have access to that information. Michelle, Sarah, and Dave, if there are any additional thoughts or links that you want us to share with our families, just send me an email. We'll make sure to include those as well. We're so grateful to everybody for making this happen today. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.